You are the fartless bat.
The fartless wonder. Hello and welcome to the Drunk Up Podcast. This is QUACKCAST number 447. I'm Ozone Ocean and with me is Tance. Hi Tance.
Hello.
And Baines. Hi Baines.
Hello.
All
I am
right.
the monarch of the sea. I am the ruler of the...
Someone probably just, kissed Baines or something.
That's right.
Was that Gilbert and Sullivan or what?
I'm not sure, but it's a song that a character named Sala sings in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Tance got it right away. I kissed a crew member in the middle of it. Yeah, that's from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it. It's been so long since I've seen that damn film. I tried to get it, but I couldn't get a copy for ages.
You're simply not a true fan. That's the only thing.
Not a true fan. Oh, man. So, in this QUACKCAST, we're going to be talking about movie franchises, but not just all movie franchises. We're going to talk about one, Indiana Jones. And for the month of October, we're going to talk about a separate movie franchise for each QUACKCAST. And this week, we're talking about Indiana Jones, which he is in 3 films. Only 3. I mean, there's rumors of a 4th.
Yeah. That's right.
What kind of idiot believes that?
But you take back one film to honor the Hebrew god whose franchise this is.
Oh.
And he was part of a great
Okay,
TV
I found my
series
place
as
in
well.
I found my place in this QUACKCAST. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to quote the movie constantly.
And they'll be all obscure to me because I haven't seen it for years.
You will be the actual interesting part of the QUACKCAST.
It's a little spice.
Spice
The
from
spice
the
is
east.
what makes it interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, first up, we have to do the QUACKCAST featured comic. So this was a feature that I featured, and it's called Out of the Blue. So, take it away, me, with Out of the Blue. Hello, I'm Ozone Ocean, and my feature for the week was Out of the Blue. 2 friends, known to each other as Liv and Indigo, create unusual and imaginative plays together that they act out in the forest, complete with amazing costumes. We catch them in the middle of one such performance, each dressed in fantastic fashion. We learn that the next performance will be based on Liv's dream, but not only that, it will be a complete recreation in an attempt to reach a revelation. Out of the Blue is an interesting and unusual comic with a slightly unconventional story and characters. It's set in a world a little unlike our own, where the colour of bird speech bubbles has a specific meaning. I would class this as a fantasy story. The art is all drawn with pen on paper and painstakingly coloured with watercolour paints and then scanned. And this gives it a unique look and feel, also a slightly textural look. It's sort of slightly faded, as you would expect from something that's been scanned, but real. Well, when I say real, not digital, so none of the texture or effects are simulated. This is all created with actual instruments of art. So it's an unusual look to it. It's quite nice to see. Very, very painstaking work. Especially you see one of the, I think it's the image I use for the cover, with these tiny little flowers, each painted individually. That's not copy and paste texture. That's not a special brush you design in Photoshop. That's, each individual petal has been painted. So it looks really, really cool. Yeah, it's a comic that's slightly surreal, I would say. Surreal, that would be a good description. So it's an unusual style of comic, not just visually, but in the storytelling. And thematically, it's an unusual comic. So yeah, definitely check it out. Out of the Blue. So this comic is created and written and everything by Shelm Knopp, and it's rated T. Thank you very much for listening to me talk about Out of the Blue. Okay, next up we have the featured music, which was Gumwallis's music for this week, and it is the theme to Out of the Blue. Oh my lords, there's more to the synchronicity. It's the theme to Out of the Blue, as well as the feature. So you've heard about it. Now listen to the theme song. Out of the Blue, retrofuturism, setting the scene for a white minimal space full of the coolest furniture, made out of chrome and smooth white vinyl, lit with soft pastel neon glows, slowly cycling through the rainbow from pink to red, yellow, green, blue, purple, and back to pink again. So, take it away, Gumwallis, with Out of the Blue. And that was the featured music. Gumwallis, thank you very much for Out of the Blue. Okay, this is a comic by Shelm Knopp, and it's rated T. Alright, so, Indiana Jones.
But out of the blue, Ozone, if it is there, Tannis, it was something that man was not meant to disturb.
You and your damn quotes.
Were all my quotes from Sala so far for some reason?
Yeah, so far.
I don't know why.
He actually is a very fun character, and
Oh yeah.
he does represent some kind of commentary on some of the methods that Indiana Jones is using, or adventurers, or things like that.
Being raiders.
You
of the
you
Lost
go
Ark.
into yeah, and it's the whole thing about respect. I think. I mean, quotes like this, like some things maybe you are not meant to disturb, or things like that. Okay, in the Indiana Jones universe, it's because you might unleash Cthulhu, but the other aspect of this is that some cultures and some people actually are very emotionally and spiritually invested in certain things. So maybe even if they have archaeological value, you shouldn't go in there to pick them apart, in a sense. And
Right.
Maybe they don't belong in a museum all the time.
Disturb the stuff.
It belongs in a museum.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, we got to sort of describe the whole, what kind of character Indiana Jones is.
Yes.
Let's just give a quick
Yes.
kind of description. So he's we talked about this in
he's
our
this like
video.
eccentric pirate captain, which is what I love. And when he puts on eyeshadow, but somehow it works. And so when he's first introduced, he's standing on top of a sinking ship,
Oh God,
That's a different
just as it
insight.
reaches the dock.
we are not
It's just such an incredible.
ever
sorry,
covering
what?
Pirates of the Caribbean. No.
Oh, that's not going in our franchise month.
No. The boat.
I think in Indiana Jones is the perfect 1980s cavalier, larger than life mix of scoundrel and the hero. So he is like a Tomb Raider in a sense, but also it belongs in a museum. It's not for himself. He's a scientist.
He's
as well.
altruistic.
Yeah, and he serves science and civilization and culture, more or less. So even when he's whipping around the whip
and well, aesthetically, of course, he's a 1930s. He's based on a 1930s adventurer, which was a popular theme in the 1930s. And we must also, remember that there was a lot of retro 1930s stuff happening in the 1980s. People were looking back to that era. In fashion and aesthetics, and Art Deco was coming back in. We had Miami Vice, which was focusing on this Art Deco-y kind of thing, and that was happening in fashion. All the ladies with the hair and the big shoulder pads was all based on 1930s fashions and 1930s ideals of what a woman should look like. All that glamour was very much 1930s, and so Indiana Jones was a very early kind of version of that. A lot of music, new romantics. Everyone was dressing in 1930s gear and trying to emulate that kind of feel of that kind of time. We have "Hungry Like a Wolf," the famous film clip from Duran Duran, which is set in some kind of jungle city in India or South America, and people dressed in suits and that kind of stuff, and going and visiting far off exotic places. That was a very popular thing all throughout pop culture, and Indiana Jones was just another example of that. So that's quite an interesting aspect. So he was
I also
playing
think
into
it
that.
was the spirit of exploration and discovering things either lost in time or in the future. I mean, I think we have like a Star Trek that goes into the great beyond to discover whatever is in there. And you have Indiana Jones going back in time or going into legend to discover things there. So, there is, and in the 80s there was this kind of safety, quote unquote, in a lot of the Western world, that things are going to, that good things are coming, that there is
optimism.
Yeah. There was generally a feeling of euphoria, and when people feel safe and euphoric, they like to explore. They like to go out there and get new experiences and try on different things. So, in a good sense, I think Indiana Jones embodies that, like a fun retro version. Fun with that.
So, as a character, he's quite similar to the Tintin stories in a way, or Edgar Rice Burroughs kind of characters. Like they were adventurer kind of characters as well. So Edgar Rice Burroughs character, Tintin sort of character. A GE Kinkaid, I think, is the famous character. I mentioned that in the video. He was meant to be this guy who was funded by the Smithsonian to go and search for a lost city in a cave in the Grand Canyon. He was meant to find this amazing alien kind of Aztec city, just built of gold in this cave in the Grand Canyon, and it was amazing. But it was total myth. The story hasn't got any veracity at all. But I think Indiana Jones was sort of based on him as well. So this mythical adventure, and my own character, Ace Kinkaid, is based on GE Kinkaid.
Yeah,
I think his name is GE Kinkaid. So there's that. That was an influence. Can you guys think of any other influences that were part of the went into the mixing pot that made the Indiana Jones what he is? I think he was actually named after Lucas's dog. I'm pretty sure. So there's that.
Oh, really? And then they reference that in the Last Crusade.
Or Lucas' dog or Spielberg's. Didn't Spielberg direct one of these ones? Or two?
Directed all of them.
He did? Okay, so there we are. Spielberg and Lucas. Both of those. That dream team of 1970s creative people.
Yeah, and they did work pretty well together.
For sure.
Yeah.
It was like the planets aligned, and they created some very fun. Actually, now that I think about it, it feels like it was a comic book, but in film form, like something that could very easily be a comic book.
Yeah.
But it was
fantastic visual, like some amazing visual frames, like
exactly.
in motion or not in motion. Just some iconic, like unforgettable visuals.
And you didn't have really.
Oh, sorry, Tans. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I thought it broke up. I thought you had finished.
Yeah, I was. Go ahead.
So I was going to say that it also is. It is a fun ride from start to finish, in the sense that you don't really feel too worried about the main character, in the sense that you know that he's going to prevail, and the interest and the allure is how he's going to do it when he is so accident prone, when things don't go his way, and if he gets punched, he is likely to actually feel it, and if he fights someone, it's likely that this someone's going to be better than him. So he has to, fight the plane.
Them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Basically, he has to have the plane propeller do the work for him, or something.
I was just thinking that amazing, iconic fight. Yeah, where he like swings with his whole body, swings at that guy and misses completely, and spins around. The guy punches him, and his knees Indy's knees wobble, and he falls. Like it's just, he just kind of stays alive until kind of luck comes his way, and he takes advantage of it. Yeah.
Like the famous scene where the guy pulls out a huge sword and spins it around, and Indy just pulls out a gun and shoots him instead, because he knows he can't compete on that level, and why would he anyway?
Yeah.
That was also genius, because it circumvented the up to then expectation that if you are challenged to a fight in the movies, you will fight in the way the challenger wants you to. So
you fight fair.
And fair or whatever, I choose the weapon to be swords. Okay, we'll do swords, and I'll beat you because I'm the hero. But not in this version.
Yeah.
And that was also very new at the time.
Yeah, he really was an interesting hero, because we didn't have because he was so much in the style of those 1930s gooder than good, whiter than white heroes, and yet he was very, very grey in a lot of his actions and the way he thinks about things. And that made quite a stark contrast to his own aesthetic. So he was quite a dirty, unshaven kind of fellow. Which is
and he gets progressively dirty as he, is being chased, or he is chasing someone else, and things like this. Like, you don't have the prim out of the box hero that adjusts his bow tie after finishing a fight, and it's like he is just off the ironing board, because that's how crisp he is in everything.
Not a James Bond, not an Errol Flynn.
Exactly. And also that he has a level of cynicism and a different packaging of his chivalry, in a sense. I wouldn't say that he's less chivalrous, but he expresses it in completely different ways. So he might appear at first to be, not that much of a knight, He antagonizes the leading lady, or he downright hates the leading lady, and he is chauvinist at times, or he is going to leave her tied up at the pole because it serves the plot better, or his plan better, and things like this. But he will not drop the ball in the sense that he will not let her perish, in a sense.
Yeah, he's an interesting character in so many ways. That he he's quite different to what had come before in a lot of ways. And just coming back to your comic idea, I'm thinking that he was probably based on some 1930s and even 1940s style, like maybe war comics or whatever. I think maybe that would have gone into the mix of his development. I'm not sure.
I remember hearing, were there adventure serials like along the lines of Flash Gordon that Star Wars was based on? Weren't there like serials? It's been a long time since I looked at. I think there was. I remember seeing something or reading something about this, and even seeing footage that looked really similar to Raiders. That it was very much based on, that flavor of adventure. I'm not totally sure, and I can't think of the names of them offhand. Like Star Wars, I mean, you see these old Flash Gordon serials, and it's like, oh my god, it looks so much like Star Wars. You see the direct connection, you know?
Yeah.
Is there similar stuff with Indy? I don't remember, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know.
But,
I just thought of things like, the scenes with the
Tintin, I would say.
Yeah.
Like you said already.
Like with the tank and the Zeppelins and things like that are very much the kind of things you'd have in comics of the time.
Right.
In I would say not comics, pulp fiction. Like
the pulps.
Right.
Exactly. I think there were like Adventure Man or something like that. That had stories like this, and you could even say that something like Conan was a little bit in that flavor. Of course, he wasn't a scientist or an archaeologist or whatever, and he was way earlier in the timeline than the 1930s.
It's good you say that, though. There was the
that was actually, now that you say it, it was like that flavor of adventure is in a lot of those.
Exactly, that's the thing.
The other stories by Robert E. Howard were set in the 1930s and did have people over in those kind of lands in the 1930s and 1920s. So like he had El Barak, which is an American who is living in the deserts or whatever, and on the oil fields and that kind of stuff, and dealing with the tribes people, but in the modern day, and very much an Indiana Jones kind of character, and other characters.
I could also say that there are elements of H.P. Lovecraft, but with the horror taken out. If you take out the horror that Lovecraft has, and just take the setup and the whole atmosphere of mystery and intrigue and suspense of what's happening.
Exploration in some of them.
Exploration, and dealing with the occult in a sense.
That's right.
Yeah. Definitely horror, though. Aspects of it, at least, with the the face melting and all that kind of stuff. That was quite horrific. Yeah. And then in the second one, the Temple of Doom, we have all the heart eating and the terrible pit. I mean, not very Lovecraftian, but definitely horror in its own kind of way. Which again wasn't
the bugs and the
and that wasn't typical for an adventure TV adventure movie of the time. To have that level.
And you also have in that middle one, it's weird, it has a child slavery actually, and whippings and really dark stuff.
Yeah.
considering the number 1 and number 3 in the series. So, yeah.
It's not a bad film, the second one. I think it gets a more of a bad rap than it deserves, but the first one is the best, obviously, for me anyway.
For me, it's the third one.
Oh.
Yeah, definitely. I love that second one, though, I have to admit. I mean, it's got darkness in it. And I'm kind of glad. I'm very glad they did the third one and sort of got the tone back more Raiders. But there's amazing stuff in that second movie. And
I have mixed feelings about the second movie. I remember watching it as a kid. It was, I think, my very first time that I remember thinking in my mind as I was watching it, what the hell am I watching right now? What is this? But not it wasn't traumatizing. That's another thing. Like, it was around the time I also watched Poltergeist, and that was traumatizing. I had a lot of trouble as a kid to overcome closets as a result. Yeah. And cemeteries, but mostly closets.
I was afraid of an open window after Poltergeist. Like, remember the tree comes through the window? Like, I remember being so scared looking out my window, my curtainless window.
I was afraid of TV screens with the static on TVs.
Oh, okay. And I remember that the first week or so after seeing it, I couldn't look in the mirror either.
Yeah, mirrors are fucking scary.
For very brief moments, like okay, go, okay, go.
I mean, jumping topic for a minute. Have you guys seen this YouTube video of this cat, and it sees itself in the mirror, and it touches paws, and it's slowly examining itself, sort of touching paw here, touching paw, reaching up and touching the nose, and then, looking away and looking back again, and then, doing all these kind of movements with its mirror self, and then it gradually paws its way down, and then it sort of settles on the ground looking at its mirror self, and it looks away, and as it's looking away, you see the mirror version look the other way. Oh my god! What the hell is happening here? It's like really cool. I think so. I reckon someone very cleverly edited that in there, but it looks like oh my god, it was with its twin the whole time, or some mirror cat. But
or the mirror is possessed by a cat.
It was pretending to be the mirror version, but yes, it's the evil spirit all along. It's the poltergeist. But so it was a bit weird, that second one, and it took you away from stuff, but it wasn't traumatized. I don't know whether I would have been traumatized watching it. It was strange. The first one, I found that scene with the face melting, because I was quite young when I saw that. I found that quite horrific, but that's the only real thing. Well, apart from the guy being chopped up by a helicopter blade, but you don't really see that. That's sort of off screen, isn't it, mostly?
Scary moments. I found a few. The snake pit, the ending. I don't remember if the corpses and the sort of grotesquerie at the beginning bothered me as much. I don't quite remember.
Of the first one?
First one, yeah. The second one, I was a bit jaded by then, or just jaded enough that I wasn't super disturbed.
Yeah, I think I would have been disturbed if I saw that as a young child, with pulling hearts out and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I can't say, and that's the thing. I wasn't that disturbed because somehow it didn't feel very real. It felt more like a comic book, even back then as a child. So, I wasn't, excited to be looking at it, and I was sort of questioning, like, should I be watching this? Is like, am I legal watching this as a kid? but it didn't feel like didn't disturb me deep inside in a sense, and I think that's because it felt like a comic book
All right. Yeah, it
more than
has.
anything.
I think what contributes to that is there's a whole lot of overuse of lighting when we've got, the underground Kali cult people, Kali Ma, whatever they were, I can't remember. But yeah, there's really bright red lights on him as if it's coming up from the lava, and that sort of gives it a very comic book feel because it's a bit too larger than life. From what I remember, it's been a while since I saw that. So, you guys, your favorite ones are like the third film and Ainley?
Come again in the second part. I didn't catch it.
Your favorite films in the series, well, both of you, it's the third film. It's The Last Crusade.
Yes.
It's the most quotable, I would say.
Really?
Definitely Raiders of the Lost Ark is my favorite.
Oh, right. Sure. That's my favorite too, the Raiders, yeah. Because that really is
the second two
establishing.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Temple of Doom I love so much. I watched it so much, even when as a teenager and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, I was just really into it. Last Crusade I love a lot. But yeah, I would say that they're very close, man. They're great. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, all of them.
Yeah, and that's I do like Raiders a lot, and I think that they maybe like they focus a lot more actually on Indiana Jones as a character and the things that happen to him and stuff than they do in The Last Crusade. In The Last Crusade, the focus is not Indy himself, but his relationship with his dad and this entire tug of war between the two Joneses, in a sense, rather than Indiana Jones only. So he gets more fun scenes, especially the one with the mirror in the pirate boat. That was fun. Oh no!
Yeah. In Raiders.
That wasn't the Raiders, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. When Marion flips over the mirror, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Thinking back on the films, you mentioned the relationship with his dad there in the third film. So he's had relationships in all the films that are notable. So in the first film, he's got a girl with him, and second film, another woman, but she's really a bit more annoying, I suppose. And he's also got Short Round, the little Chinese Hong Kong boy, with him.
Hold on to your potatoes.
Yeah.
I think that annoyed a lot of people.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably being very cynical here, but it's like the first movie is the leading lady that is marriage material. The second movie is the leading lady that is the booty call, and the third movie is the leading lady that is the evil temptress. So booty call, right. But then boom here fast.
Oh, okay. So you've got. So you're saying it's a mother, maiden, and crone. It's gone in that order.
Yes, exactly.
The traditional archetypes of women.
Well, whether we like it or not, they are very, very prominent and broad archetypes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that I think is a good choice. Why in the movie that we never mentioned that the mother material returns, and the wife material is the one that he completes the journey with. That was a good choice.
Oh well,
that was a good choice. Yeah.
Another say.
Wait, how would you define the woman in the third one?
The crone.
The evil, the beautiful but evil one.
Temptress.
Right.
Yeah. Well,
Temptress.
I was just saying crone because that's usually, I mean, it's not always an old woman, it can be an evil woman. So it can be
the witch. Let's say she's the witch.
Yeah.
Right.
Basically.
I was just thinking, all of those early ones, they're all set, pretty much in the 30s. The last one, the one that we don't talk about, is set in the 1950s. I think maybe that's another reason for the people's dislike about it. I won't say the hate, because when people say the hate, they mean something. Oh, I don't get it. Why would anyone hate this? You're just haters. You've got no reason to hate. So you're just haters.
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason why it's disliked, maybe part of the reason is 1950s, and it's just not in the era. No longer are the Nazis the bad guys. It's now Soviets who are the bad guys. And
I think the thing is, it could work in the 50s, but you would need to keep some of the same patterns, let's say, and not just replace the bad guys with, the Cold War agenda, because it wouldn't be very consistent. Indy has a problem with Nazis. He hates these guys, and there's a reason why, because they have, which wasn't actually historically untrue, they had this thing of poaching artifacts and ancient objects and trying to boost their Uberman's agenda with it. So he would actually hate these guys because they are ruining his science in a lot of ways, not only by stealing the artifacts, but also by forging and reimagining history to fit their political purpose. The Russians didn't have this as much, at least, that I know, or the Soviets.
Yes, the Soviets were more about ignoring history and remaking everything anew to be in the glorious workers.
I think the Soviets were more like, look at this horrid history full of terrible, rich people, and now how we have overcome all this.
Yeah, exactly.
So they need the previous stages to justify their existence. So we need the Tsar to be there and to having been, basically your big bad guy, who he was. Let's not be.
The Tsar was a dick.
So we exactly, and we are the ones protecting you from this kind of bad guy coming back. So the Soviets actually need history a lot more than the Nazis did. I mean actual history.
Real history, not the invented, made up kind that they
exactly.
love. With their Aryans and all this kind of invention.
And the thing is that during the 50s, the Nazis were defeated, and Nuremberg had finished up some kind of lip service cleanup. But the thing is that they were still pretty much around. You had the Odessa project, or you had others masquerading and hiding, and there were a lot of agencies still looking for Nazis and looking for stuff that the Nazis have hidden, like a secret Nazi cache areas,
artworks all over the place.
Exactly.
He could have gone.
Exactly.
I was just going to say he could have gone to Chile, or Argentina, of course, where a lot of Germans there. But Chile, the whole political system was based on Nazism. The uniforms of their soldiers and their generals. They're walking around with Nazi Stahlhelms. Their generals are wearing Nazi generals' coats and, outfits. They're pure Nazi stuff. Even to the 1970s, I think, they're still wearing Nazi outfits in Chile, for goodness sake.
I didn't know that, but or you could have, and so you could easily have a 1950s Indiana Jones, and he could actually be a little, rougher around the edges. Like they do try to portray him, more rough around the edges, because he has been through World War II. So obviously, there's more mileage there. But he could absolutely be going after Nazis or encountering Nazis for the things that he is trying to look for and find and, hunt down.
He's
Which
bumping into them.
Mm-hmm.
Bumping into Nazis, also going after the same things, for different reasons.
Exactly. For example, you could have old, quote unquote, in the 50s, Nazis wanting to revive the Reich, and they need this, X artifact that is, very, very important in bringing back Hitler. I don't know what, but whatever. I mean, you could have some kind of plot like this. Or you could have him, if you wanted to do some political commentary, on the fringe, you had McCarthyism being really, really prominent.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And he would not be very much a loved person in McCarthy era because he wants to talk about things that would be forbidden in many ways. And he might even be, prosecuted, and maybe he has to do certain things, or he is presented with a kind of ultimatum, and he has to find certain things to keep his family, or Marian or whoever,
from being
out of a blacklist.
Yeah.
That sounds great. That would have been great. Yeah, to really sort of tie it into that real world kind of.
Yeah, if you are gonna do the 50s, grow a pair and do the 50s, actually.
The paperclips.
Or the secret Nazi hangers-on. I kind of, when that movie was coming out, I was kind of anticipating something like that.
Me too. I was
disappointed. The paperclip Nazi scientists, one of them could be some kind of evil, could be having some evil agenda to create a nuclear bomb that blew up Washington or something like that. That could be in there, because there were actual scientists who were part of Hitler's war effort that were just taken over to the States, and they were still vetting them that stage in the 1950s, but they were, the architects of the moon landings and all this kind of stuff. Like von Braun and his whole gang, they weren't all nicey good people. They were just as bad as they had been in Nazi Germany. So, they could have easily had that just made for them.
It's not that like you had the issues. I remember one of the most popular modern times Greek TV series, like around the 90s, if I'm not mistaken, was called the Throne Room, and that was because it was set in Crete and around the Palace of Knossos, where you have the throne room, which is very, very famous. And there is this saying that whoever sits on the throne in the throne room gets judged, in a sense, because that's the throne of Midas. So anyway, and this was, the entire story was about this amazing person that people really like, and he is a very mild and soft-toned foreigner who helps everyone, and he is a little bit quirky, and he has a bit of a weird turn of phrase and things like that. But you discover in the end that he is actually a Nazi, that he is hiding in Crete, and he has taken on the identity of a Cretan that he killed in the Battle of Crete. So there's that. So what I'm saying is that the plots with Nazis post-war
Yeah.
have been abandoned, and they are very easy to build the way you like. So
Yeah, there was no reason to jump off script and go for boring Soviet kind of stuff that none of us really care about. Stay with the theme, the core theme. What's that?
Now that you mention it, that's the other thing. We are very, like in pop culture, we are very used to the Nazis being the evil guys with the very characteristic jeeps that go around being larger than life, ridiculously evil with stuff, and going out to collect stuff that don't belong to them. Like they have this whole mythos around them that we feel very much at ease to have them in a story like this. Whereas the Soviets are a different kind of villain, quote unquote. When we had, like in pop culture, what the Soviets were impersonating wasn't that. They were not swashbuckling, larger than life villains that twirl their mustaches. They were the quiet and very sinister, underhanded murder assassins, in a sense.
Yeah.
That's
and the scary thing about them was, so we've got the KGB, evil kind of in the
exactly.
shadows. But the other scary thing about them was they want to change our way of life and just like take everything away from us and like make us all poor or whatever, and just invade. They're a horde. So it has very different thing from the whole Nazi idea, just completely different, and that can't really, as you say, it can't be represented by swashbuckling baddies in a film like that.
But if it was real creativity and
not even James Bond did it.
These filmmakers, well, right, yeah, but that would have been a bold way to go with indie. Sort of take on that kind of vibe and make it work. I mean, I don't know, man. Maybe it could have worked.
Well, as a more James Bondy kind of cloak and dagger against the KGB.
Change the vibe of the villains, even at least for part of the story. I mean, you want indie to be indie, of course. So I don't know if it would have worked.
Well, with the new Joker movie, I would say that if you are accomplished enough, you can change the tone, and it will still be, well accepted.
But then again,
you have to know what to do, though.
With the Joker,
apparently good.
Oh, sorry. With the Joker, you have different actors and different directors and different everything. But with Indie, you've got the same actor playing the guy, unless you're talking about the TV series, where it's a younger person playing young Indy. But so you got the same guy, you're doing him, the same person, same kind of way of thinking, everything like that. So you can't really change the tone because.
And the other thing, now that I remember, like I have seen the film that we don't talk about just 2 times.
We won't talk about call to mind our friend Jameis from last week. We won't talk about
another thing
Crystal Skull.
That they went for. I think they went for something, it just didn't land very well. In that they put a lot of focus on Indy being old. Like, you are old, you're a has-been, so if you're gonna go with that, you cannot have the old guy still do the old stunts that he used to do, use the whip or use the whip in that way. At least if you're gonna do that, he's old now and he cannot function as he used to, in the earlier days and stuff. Then find new ways for him, because that's what Indy does. He cannot deal in a situation in manner number 1. He finds number 2 to go through and succeed. So have him act in a way that would be age appropriate. He will not be jumping around like a cockroach not a flying cockroach. I'm not saying grasshopper because he doesn't do that, but he will not do that.
He'll use his intelligence to find out a better way.
Yeah, have the young guy do that. And actually have the young guy do it badly because he's inexperienced, whereas Indy would be the experienced one, and he would show him, for example, how to bend the wrist just right, so that he can actually make the whip work the way he needs it to, and stuff like that. Yeah. So if you want to have that scene where he takes the hat and he puts it on his son, have him actually mentor him, and pass on the knowledge. I didn't see that, and that was, I think that was a thing that didn't do the movie any favors. Let's say that.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to the thing of loving Indiana Jones because things were difficult for him from the beginning of the series. That's what took me out of it. It wasn't even climbing into the fridge and going flying in the fridge. It was the fact that I've only seen the movie once, but I'll have to see it again maybe to be sure about it. The fact that he seemed to roll out of it, no problem. Like he was actually, not only did they not do the mentoring thing or having him, completely out of it, they made him more physically capable. That's what it felt like to me anyway. Like he kind of was able to do anything he wanted to do, and he didn't have a bad shoulder. He didn't have a bad knee, It's like, I kind of wanted that kind of stuff, even if it's only they went halfway. Like he's still, tough. He's still an action hero, but they would sort of acknowledge a little more, that he was older.
Now that I think of it, if he had something like that, like a very prominent physical flaw that doesn't always hinder him. Like, for example, if he had a bad knee, but it either locks or folds at random times.
Oh, yeah.
It happens if you have a bad knee. And it does the thing that it shouldn't do at the worst time possible every single time. So,
yeah, exactly.
Or a bad back.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. So I wonder, do they just not think of it, or is there ego involved with an actor? And by the way, Harrison Ford was amazing. The problem with that movie was not Harrison Ford. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing, kind of ageless in a way, but so I don't know if there was ego involved. I kind of don't think so, but yeah, man, it's kind of strange that they wouldn't sort of acknowledge that. Still make him cool, but make him struggling harder. Yeah, that was a huge problem with the character for me in that movie. It's because really...
as we've said before, in the other films, he got not only progressively dirtier, but progressively more injured and stained up and bruised. And that was what made the character wasn't what made the character so great, but it was part of what went into making the character so cool, that he was like a real person and we could identify with him. If we jumped and, were on a tank fighting a German, what kind of injuries would we have after a while? And we'd be, aching away and limping and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And that's what he did. And it lent the character a lot of veracity. It made suspension of disbelief a lot easier with the character too. Which is, you can think of him as, when he gets hit or something, you feel that. You go, oh, God, oh. And when he's, he's tumbling around on the gritty, rocky ground, you think, oh my God, that's got to hurt. And it rips up his clothes and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, you can see the damage on him. And it makes us feel for him. It makes us empathize with the character.
And he gets tired. There's also the tiredness. You can see him be exhausted.
Yeah. Things take its toll on him. Yeah, it's all part of what makes him so real. But so you're saying I haven't seen. I'm taking this on faith from you guys. I haven't seen that the Crystal Skull movie, so that doesn't happen in that one. so much.
Not that I saw.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't actually happen. It happens in name only, in the sense that he's saying that he feels terrible. He's saying that he's exhausted. He's saying that he's too old for this.
Ugh.
It's another thing.
Yeah.
But you don't really see.
Next week, Lethal Weapon. Yeah.
You don't really see it, and I think like I liked the third one with his dad because they have this very real, it feels real at least, interaction with each other. You believe that these two characters have had a history that is a bad history, like a bad history that has stayed with them and defined them in certain ways, that keeps surfacing very easily. Like you scratch the surface, all the grievances come out, which can happen. We all have family we have these issues with, or at least a lot of people have issues. Or could be not your family or your friend or whoever, an old teacher. That situation where it's very easy to feel all the emotions that come with that. In the fourth one, they try to do that with his son, in a sense, but cannot have it because he doesn't know he has a son. So he doesn't have this relationship. Yeah. Also, he isn't even like a professor with his student, for example. Not even that kind of a relationship. You have this obnoxious whippersnapper that demands things from him, and then you have this obnoxious old guy that is needlessly aggressive and antagonizing to this kid that he shouldn't be taking seriously like an equal. He's like he could be your son. You don't talk to him like he's your peer, in a sense. I don't know if I'm getting across what I mean. Like the relationship feels very forced and very crafted by the writer rather than organic.
I wonder if Lucas wrote it.
He could have. I mean, Lucas isn't the best storyteller. He's a good world builder, but that's about it.
Concept and like initial story. I mean, he's one of the. I mean, he's amazing. Great.
Yeah.
But when you really dig into either directing or even writing a screenplay, like you maybe want someone else. I heard there was a script that maybe, just maybe, that I heard Frank Darabont, the guy who made Shawshank Redemption and everything, and Green Mile, Ted's his favorite movie. He wrote a screenplay, and there was I don't know anything about it, but other than like apparently there was a twist on the it's not the years, it's the mileage. There was some kind of thing like it's not the mileage, it's the years. Was that he said that at one point? A 20-something short round was in it, and just that to me was tantalizing. And George Lucas turned it down.
Oh no! Yeah, 20-something short round. That would have been interesting.
Even a cameo, it would have been great. A little nod to that. Yeah.
And considering that in the 50s, 20-something short round would be coming from communist China.
Or maybe Hong Kong as well.
Yeah.
Or Hong Kong, which would be, or, somewhere in Shanghai, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been fascinating. Yeah, because the Cultural Revolution happened. Yeah, Mao had taken over China and transformed it, again, in a far more bizarre way than what had happened in Russia. And
exactly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it more bizarre. It's very consistent with the culture, as far as I know. So.
With China.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, quite different to what happened in Russia anyway.
The approach is very. The approach is the communist version of Mao is very Chinese, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So it's very different from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just say that, yeah, quite unusual. Yeah, but very consistent with what past emperors have done in a lot of ways. Subjugating the people, erasing history, all this kind of stuff. That's it's pretty common in Chinese history to do that sort of thing. But yeah, we're not talking about Chinese history. We're talking about Indiana Jones. But we've sort of
I think, so that's why we don't talk about that film. I think that they didn't catch the whole essence of Indiana Jones. It read more like a fan fiction than anything else.
Well, I'll have to see it and judge
not
for
an easy
myself.
thing to do, like recapture these old beloved things and bring them back 10, 12, 15 years later, or whatever it was.
Well, they did pretty well with the Indiana Jones, Young Indiana Jones TV series. That was an interesting conception.
An episode or two of that,
Yeah. That was sort of set in a slightly earlier time, First World War sort of thing, and it was quite a different version of the character. Because he was younger, played by a different actor, and we got to see other sides of Indy. So nothing comparing to the first three movies that were,
I wonder what's going to happen with the new one. Like the new one was just delayed again. I think I read somewhere. I don't know.
They have another one come. They have another one,
but it's delayed, and
God.
that just seems like really much as I love Harrison Ford, I love Indy, but it's like really like now the guy's like 80 years old. What's it going to be? Like it's hard to imagine what
he belongs to the museum.
I know exactly what they'll do. They'll have Indy as they have in the new Terminator film, which I haven't seen. I've just seen the previews, but the old guys are usually on the sidelines, and they'll have the new people doing all the stunts and being the Indiana Jones. They'll have the new guys doing the roles.
So he'll just be a cameo. I don't imagine they would do that. It's like, why bother?
That's what they're doing in the Terminator. Sarah Connor, whoa, she's back. Sarah Connor and Schwarzenegger, they're back, but they're just window dressing. They're not the film.
That's another one.
Just to get the fans.
Like 10 or even 5 years ago, and ever since T2 came out, it's been like, why? Like, bring back Sarah Connor, bring back Linda Hamilton, and they never did. And now that they're doing it, I don't care.
It's too late now.
It's too late. Yeah.
But it's not necessarily like you could have a new Indiana Jones easy. I could totally see that because it's the role and it's the character. Of course, Harrison Ford is iconic, but that doesn't mean that another actor cannot bring a new iteration of the character to the screen. So there's that. And you could have this new Indiana Jones character, let's say, like a new actor playing legitimately Indiana Jones, and you could have Harrison Ford be there as a supporting character to Indiana Jones, like
that's what they'll do, I think.
Maybe it will.
Yeah, that I could see that, and that would be like a nice nod. That I could be easier with, to be honest.
Personally, what I would want to see is Harrison Ford being Indy as an old guy, and just make the film about
to me, I'll go see it, for sure. I want to see him as Indy again, even if he's 90.
I'd like to see a film from the perspective of a genuinely old person who we grew up with, seeing him as a young guy, and seeing what kind of struggles can he deal with now,
Yeah, I'd like, I could go, either way would be.
Well, it's like Tan said before, he was a bit older in the 1950s version, Crystal Skull, and there were certain things that he shouldn't have been able to do, and he should have come up with more creative ways. But now he really should do that because he's much older, and I think that would be amazing. I think that would be a fascinating film to see that.
Absolutely, if they actually sit down to think about it. And I have to say something else. Like they have this tendency in films like this that when a character, goes beyond like 55 or 60 years old, they are automatically geriatric. And that's not right, because a person in their 60s is not necessarily old. It depends. It depends. And it's, of course, they are not going to be like they are, when they are 30, but they are not going to need a walker, is what I'm saying. They're not going to be has-beens. They're not going to be people that aren't very dynamic and very tough and with able bodies, in a sense.
Yeah, he's not going to be as strong. And he's not going to be as coordinated anymore. There's those kind of things. So he wouldn't whip a whip across onto a ledge and pull himself up. But he's not going to be limping, dragging himself along and pulling on a balustrade or something to climb stairs. Yeah, so
exactly.
Go extreme.
Or actually, you know what I would say? Like if in his 30s, because I think that's where he's like early 40s, late 30s, I think, more or less. So if he could, crack the whip and have it snug around and the outcropping so that he can swing across, when he's like in his early 60s, he probably can make it, wrap around the outcropping, because that is just the skill, but maybe he cannot swing across without effort, much more effort than before, which might present different issues, blah, 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 blah. But I really don't like, exactly, I don't like, presenting people that are above 40, I mean the decade of 40, as like old. Oh my God, like we should find a glass case for you and preserve it.
I mean, I know people in their 60s who are hardy and who are, very capable. They have strength even. Like people who are, for sure, it's there. I agree.
Definitely, I know people in their 70s.
And even if it's exaggerated, like a 65-year-old, but a 60-plus-year-old Batman or a 60-plus-year-old Indy, I'm okay even with a little exaggeration of physical ability, but like just an acknowledgement that it's hard. Yeah, makes you root for them more.
Aching joints, arthritis, all that kind of thing. It humanizes the character. But I like what you said, Tance, about sweeping the whip across something and not being able to necessarily swing across. But maybe he tries and he falls, and that's part of the thing. That would be great. You go. Yeah, you'd be sympathizing, empathizing with him, and be right in there.
And then he doesn't need to tell you, "Oh, I'm old. Yeah. Oh, I'm made for this thing." Because actually, in that fourth movie, he says that right after he completes this stunt that he walks away from with no problem, and he says, "Oh, I'm too old for this. I did it okay, but I'm too old for this." Like, I'm
too old for this shit.
Exactly.
Go split, Riggs. Go split.
Exactly. If you see that he has the skill to do it, but his body cannot follow as well, then you are thinking that he is too old for this. Yeah. He doesn't need to tell you that.
Exactly.
So
don't tell, kids.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that's where we'll wind it up, so you guys can do your Saturday things. And this has been our QUACKCAST. All right.
Sweet.
Thank you for the IndieCast. Woohoo! All right.
Call us a podcast.
We'll come up with our next movie franchise next week and see how we go. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Join us next time
Stay
for
tuned.
the Police Academy.
Oh my God. Maybe. Maybe.
Exploration. I haven't seen enough of them.
Oh, yeah. I have to rewatch all of those then.
Okay.
I think I've only seen a couple of them.
Revenge of the Nerds. All right.